In a long-awaited post, I am going to explain why I think the long 2016 Russian election operation may have been the most successful intelligence operation in recent history.
Did you want President Trump to win the election, and did you direct any of your officials to help him do that?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
If we go back and look at the first ball of threats, and that was back in May of 2024, so almost a year and a half ago, I laid out the Russian investigation having 5 parts.
Quote, the Russian government engaged in an aggressive, multifaceted effort to influence or attempt to influence the outcome of the 2016 presidential election.
There are the 3 parts people know from the Muller investigation, which are the social media.
If you can think of a social media platform, there's a strong chance the Russians used it to try to influence the 2016 US presidential election.
The hack and leak campaign.
I love WikiLeaks. These WikiLeaks, as confirmed just today by WikiLeaks.
It's been amazing what's coming out on WikiLeaks. They want to distract us from WikiLeaks.
Boy, that WikiLeaks has done a job on her, hasn't it?
And the efforts to cultivate Trump's people.
I wanted to ask you about that famous photo, the former Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and the Russian President Vladimir Putin together in 2015 at a dinner in Moscow. You also, Jill Stein, were at that dinner. What were you doing there?
I argued as well that there was, first of all, a built-in attack on the U.S. deep state. And at the time, I pointed to the shadow brokers operation, which burned a lot of NSA tools.
The shadow brokers. Could you give us a little thumbnail about what this case was all about?
Yeah, so there was this group, never before heard from, never heard from again, right? You know, they ultimately showed up on the scene in, let's see, I think that was late 16 into early 17. They ended up dumping some pretty gnarly, not just zero-day vulnerabilities, but actually weaponized exploits for those vulnerabilities, right? WannaCry, as a result of that, NotPetya directly used that, that's a big attack that crippled Maersk and a bunch of Ukrainian businesses.
Just as importantly, during the entire time the WikiLeaks hack and leak campaign was developing.
I personally will not be talking about any revelations that come about solely as a result of WikiLeaks. Our intelligence officials, who are not partisan people, have told us this is the work of a foreign intelligence agency.
They were also sitting on CIA's hacking tools, which they started to release in March of 2017.
The leaks purportedly show that the CIA is capable of hacking smartphones, computer operating systems, automobiles, messenger applications, and even internet-connected televisions.
Both of those guaranteed at the time that by embracing the WikiLeaks hack and leak campaign, Trump and people like Roger Stone didn't give a fuck.
If Donald Trump runs a conventional Republican campaign, he will lose.
But people like Roger Stone were going to be in a difficult position in 2017 when the full scope of this operation was identified, because then they would be on the same side as the people basically taking out the American deep state, taking out the CIA.
If authenticated, the trove would be one of the biggest breaches in the spy agency's history.
Taking out the NSA.
Baltimore is only one of multiple American cities and other places that have been attacked using Eternal Blue. The experts we talked to said that the use of Eternal Blue in this case, NSA's software, made the attack worse than it would have been otherwise.
The 5th part that I argued was the dossier, was the disinformation built into that. In other words, according to the DOJ IG investigation in John Durham, Oleg Deripaska,
an aluminum magnate, is thought to have close ties with Vladimir Putin,
got word of the Steele dossier project very early on.
After all, I was an intelligence officer myself. And I do know how dossiers are made up.
That's not surprising, because a lawyer for Oleg Deripaska had paid Steele to collect on Paul Manafort just before the Steele dossier.
So at some point, one of your lawyers, I think, came to work in a capacity with Christopher Steele. I wonder if you could just describe yourself, what that relationship was like.
It was a research project to support one of the cases against me in London.
As a result, the Steele dossier was really just a continuation of that earlier Deripaska thing.
The only purpose for me or my people to have any interest in his, dealing future was to get money back, which was borrowed from my companies or improperly, taken, from investment, which was done. And it's a big sum, up to 50 million.
Particularly the worst disinformation in the dossier, such as the claim
that Cohen had secret meetings with Kremlin officials in Prague in August 2016, just weeks after President Trump accepted the Republican nomination.
That he had spoken directly with the Kremlin to clean up Donald Trump's dirt, had real strains of reality, right?
Cohen's lawyer released a secret recording from 2016 of Cohen and Trump discussing how they could buy the rights to Playboy model Karen McDougal's story of an alleged long-running affair with Mr. Trump, an affair the White House denies.
Michael Cohen was cleaning up Donald Trump's dirt at the time, but the dirt was the Stormy Daniels problem.
Is there anybody that you know of, that anybody knows talk to anybody in Russia?
No, there's no relationship.
Michael Cohen had called the Kremlin during the campaign, but that was in January 2016. And more importantly, Donald Trump and Michael Cohen, from the day that Donald Trump said publicly,
There were developers in Russia that wanted to put a lot of money into developments in Russia, and they wanted us to do it, but it never worked out. Frankly, I didn't want to do it for a couple of different reasons.
It was the same time he said,
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing.
That led immediately to a new hack on Hillary Clinton. In that same talk, Trump also said, I have no business dealings with Russia. And from that point forward, Michael Cohen and Donald Trump were stuck in a lie with Russia because the Kremlin literally had receipts from that phone call that Michael Cohen made in January 2016 saying, I want to do a business deal that will involve the GRU, that will involve sanctioned banks.
Did you seek to acquire funding through Russian banks for the deal?
To build a building like that in Moscow, the only banks you can go to are Russian banks.
Before it became such an issue, when it became clear that the GRU had hacked Hillary Clinton.
Donald Trump. You called him brilliant, outstanding, talented. I was wondering what in him led you to that judgment, and do you still hold that judgment?
I only said that he was a bright person. Isn't he bright? I did not say anything else about him. But there's one thing that I paid attention to and that I definitely welcome, is that Mr. Trump said he's ready to restore full-fledged Russian-American relations. What can there be bad about it? Don't you welcome it?
Well, let me take a step back. The cultivation of Donald Trump was built in the form of a quid pro quo, right? So Donald Trump is offered this ridiculously lucrative Trump Tower deal.
Last year, we learned that Sater, who's an American citizen who was born in the Soviet Union, wrote an email to Trump lawyer Michael Cohen in 2015, vowing to engineer a deal to build a Trump Tower in Moscow, writing, quote, our boy can become president of the USA and we can engineer it.
It's exactly what he wants. He's offered that starting in 2015.
The emails may sound damning, but at the end of the day, it was emails between two friends about a real estate transaction. And me, from my perspective, from my side, I'm trying to build $1 billion deal.
He takes steps to go after that. He's offered dirt on Hillary Clinton for sanctions relief in the June 9th, 2016 meeting.
Our investigation has uncovered new information that suggests the Russian lawyer at the Trump Tower meeting, a meeting where Trump campaign officials thought they'd be getting dirt on Hillary Clinton, was far more connected to the Russian government than she'd acknowledged before.
In that same July 27th, 2016 speech, he says, yeah, we're considering recognizing Crimea.
We'll be looking at that, yeah, we'll be looking.
In the August 2nd, 2016 meeting between Konstantin Kilimnik and Paul Manafort.
You say that Gates gave Kilimnik internal polling in 2016 on battleground states. I mean, that an American Trump campaign official gave it to a Russian Ukrainian official. What do you think that was all about? What for?
So in addition to that, Christian, that was repeatedly given.
He tells Russia how he's going to win the campaign, which is shared with Russian intelligence. And in exchange, he talks about how he's going to get paid millions or millions in debt relief.
And it's a big sum, up to 50 million.
We don't know what the quid pro quo was with Roger Stone, but we believe that he got advance notice of the John Podesta emails.
We have Roger Stone, one of Donald Trump's longtime friends and advisors, was just convicted for, among other things, lying about the fact that he was, in Steve Bannon's words, the Trump campaign's access point to WikiLeaks and Julian Assange.
By June of 2017, he was telling Julian Assange, and this was after the release of the Vault 7 stolen CIA hacking tools, right? He said, I am working with the highest levels of government, meaning Donald Trump, to make your woes go away.
I remember very clearly during the Snowden reporting said he thought Snowden was a traitor who deserved to be executed. He had said similar things about Julian Assange. And so Trump clearly had a change of heart. He often praised Julian Assange during the 2016 campaign.
At that point, the investigation to the hack and leak was mysteriously gone. So that's the shape of the quid pro quo.
One of the things that we were able to piece together in a recount is Kilimnik comes and asks Paul Manafort to get Trump's commitment when he becomes president to allow Russia to take over half of Ukraine.
Mike Flynn gets on the phone in December of 2016 in response to Obama's sanctions.
I do not want to get us in something that has to escalate on, a tit for tat. You follow me, Ambassador?
Calls up Sergei Kislyak and says, hold off on retaliating for Obama's sanctions. We'll deal with it after the election. Now, at that point, right, you've got all the trappings of a quid pro quo. And much of that is available to U.S. intelligence. And they hadn't found any of it yet, right? They didn't know about the Manafort meetings.
The notion that Paul Manafort left Trump Tower to go meet with a guy who had ties to Russian intelligence and talk about the presidential campaign. I mean, their heads would have exploded if we had learned this in August 2016. And, the passage of time doesn't really make it any less stunning.
They didn't know about the June 9th meeting.
The issues she was concerned about were American sanctions, which she says are based on lies and false reporting. She wanted them lifted.
They had heard about the George Papadopoulos advance notice and were kind of like, what the fuck was that?
George, you did not go to the FBI or local police or anybody with the information that someone came to you with information that the Russians had Hillary Clinton's emails, correct?
That's correct.
They didn't know about the Trump Tower deal. They knew about none of that. But then when Mike Flynn reaches out to somebody who was obviously wiretapped, the ambassador to the United States, and says, hold off on the sanctions.
You follow me, Ambassador?
Then Putin, knowing that Kislyak was wiretapped, surely, says, oh, I'll hold off. There are two things that could happen at that point, right? One thing that could happen is the intelligence community could start discovering all of that.
Michael Cohen is busy working with folks in Moscow and within Russia trying to get a deal for a Trump Tower in Moscow where they'd give Vladimir Putin the entire top floor. Now, the moment Trump says that, he knows he's not telling the truth. Vladimir Putin knows he's not telling the truth. And so Trump is all of a sudden beholden to Putin and others to keep that secret. Now expand that to all the financial entanglements that you see him fighting tooth and nail to prevent coming public. All of those things represent individual items that can be used as leverage over him.
Those intercepts with Kislyak were leaked, and then Mike Flynn tried to do a cover-up. But even as he's doing that, they are reaching out to a guy named Kirill Dmitriev. He's in charge of the Russian Development Fund, and he is reaching out through, among other people, the buddy of Jared Kushner, who has a hedge fund, and also Eric Prince,
the founder of Blackwater, brother of Betsy DeVos.
He puts together a package of deals that, to do, will require releasing sanctions, will require ending sanctions.
The report is that this was, in fact, part of an effort to establish, wait for it, a secret back channel with Russia.
This is the beginning of January. Donald Trump is not yet inaugurated. Mike Flynn has already done his stupid thing.
I didn't take any money from Russia, if that's what you're asking me. Well, then who paid you?
It got picked up on FISA intercepts. Nevertheless, they're still going forward with Kirill Dmitriev, and they've got a set of packages that will lead to the end of Russian sanctions. And then Mike Flynn gets investigated.
I have great confidence in my intelligence people, but I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today. And what he did is an incredible offer. He offered to have the people working on the case come and work with their investigators with respect to the 12 people. I think that's an incredible offer. Okay, thank you.
And all falls apart. As we speak, Kirill Dmitriev is back on the scene.
The Kremlin says one of its top negotiators is planning to visit Washington, D.C. this week. Kirill Dmitriev is a close advisor to Russian President Vladimir Putin. He met with American officials in Saudi Arabia in February to discuss a deal to end the war in Ukraine. His trip to Washington would be the first by a senior official from Moscow since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Well, just a few days ago, President Trump said he was very angry with Vladimir Putin.
Kirill Dmitriev is establishing the same relationship that he had with Jared Kushner's buddy and with Eric Prince.
We don't know any official details. Everything we know from American media, and you know how often these reports have to be first verified, then, taken on.
He's doing it with Witkoff, who Michael Weiss calls Dim Philby, otherwise known as Steve Witkoff.
You are the single finest candidate since the this Nobel Award was ever talked about.
Donald Trump's, whatever he is, just go-between basically with Israel and the Middle East and Russia.
It's a real coup for Putin. Normalization talks without ending his war.
That brings us to the meeting in Alaska, right?
There were a few things that were very unusual. You had Putin come out and address the press first. I mean, we are on U.S. soil here. Usually it is the leader of the country, the host country of a summit that speaks first.
So we are going full speed ahead to pick up where we left off in January of 2017.
We would have done a lot of great things, but we had the Russia hoax, which stopped us from doing that. We would have done so great.
Where we're at right now, okay, is that Donald Trump is letting Russia do whatever it wants.
Russia has unleashed one of its deadliest offensives in months.
Russia attacked a factory in western Ukraine.
An American factory was among the buildings hit in this latest attack by Russia, which targeted parts of western Ukraine, where it's believed much of the military aid sent by allies is stored.
Trump did nothing.
President Putin, will you stop killing civilians?
Russia recently attacked Poland.
Why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch?
Trump did nothing. Russia is flying over Romania with its drones.
What once felt unthinkable now looks dangerously possible. In less than 1 week, Russia has violated the skies of not one but two NATO countries.
Trump did nothing.
Trump said it could be a mistake.
Trump, in fact, the other day said, unless Europe basically cuts China out of their life, which they can't do, they're not going to do, particularly with the sanctions, then I won't sanction Russia.
The president's latest demands risk prolonging this conflict, and time is a valuable commodity for Putin. It gives Russia the ability to make more gains on the battlefield and shore up control of some of those occupied areas.
Trump has now said Russia can do whatever it wants.
I hope it turns out well. It doesn't affect us because, we have a big ocean in between, but you're losing millions of people, and they're mostly soldiers, Russian soldiers, Ukrainian soldiers.
By the way, in addition to not doing sanctions, I'm also going to remove security support for the Baltic states. So Trump is inching closer and closer to basically fucking over NATO. That all looks terrible. This all looks like the continuation of what we saw in 2016. But I want to go back and talk about the other things that the aftermath of the 2016 attack had. So we had the social media thing. That really wasn't that big a deal, but it's worth remembering that the point of this social media campaign, Yevgeny Prigozhin's trolls, wasn't so much to help Donald Trump. It was to stoke polarization in the United States. One of the things he was trying to do was stoke the split between race, to stoke extremities.
How do we fix this country? How do we come back together?
I'll tell you something that's going to get me in trouble, but I couldn't care less. The radicals on the right oftentimes are radical because they don't want to see crime.
That's what social media does.
One of the most effective influence campaign tactics that we see, not just used by Russia, but by countries like China and Iran, that is to tamp down on dissident or minority groups that may support the opposition. In this case, it was African Americans, Latinos, gay men, were all targeted.
The social media campaign really wasn't any more important than the social media stuff that far-right trolls were doing anyway. But what's interesting is the hack and leak campaign, we've since learned, a key part of the hack and leak campaign was getting Donald Trump Jr. to push it. Donald Trump was part of a troll room, basically, that was initiated sort of by this guy Weave, Andrew Auernheimer, who at the time was the webmaster for the Daily Stormer. So these are far-right trolls, right? Don Jr. is hanging out with them. And this room, this troll effort, was actually a key part of the dissemination of making the John Podesta files go viral. So what we now know is there was this tie between this far-right troll effort, I think in eastern Ukraine, so under protection of Russia. So you've got this far-right effort that has ties to somebody who's in Russian, basically controlled territory, They're the ones who are not just pushing the hack and leak campaign to go viral, but also pushing a new kind of psyche online, right? Which is attentional, which is we are no longer making a rational argument.
Donald Trump and his son, Donald Trump Jr., have come to the defense of Douglas Mackey, a former social media influencer who has been convicted of election interference and has a history of pushing deeply racist, anti-Semitic, anti-Muslim, and homophobic content online.
The cooperating witness in the Douglas Mackey trial, who told us about those chat rooms, admitted straight out. He said, there's nothing to the John Podesta files that is meaningful.
There are no bombshells in these emails.
All we did was create a sense of controversy that would smear Hillary Clinton in the process.
They're putting Douglas McKay in jail for sharing a joking meme about Hillary Clinton 7 years ago.
That is how the right wing has flourished. Donald Trump especially has flourished. That is how Donald Trump ran his 2020 campaign. That is how Donald Trump won his 2024 campaign, by claiming that Haitians were
eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
It's the same people. It's the same social media driven mob that replaced rational choice. And by the way, that also drowned out traditional news media.
82% of the total online media audience belongs to right-wing shows. That's nearly 5 times the following of the left-leaning shows.
So that thread became really important. The thread of how you get the hack and leak campaign, give them an intentional strategy, and with it, not just dominate discourse, not just own attention, but also disrupt rational thought. The cultivation of Donald Trump could have gone either way. If Mike Flynn weren't stupid, he might have just been able to give Russia what it wanted, to give Russia to end sanctions. There probably would have been a ton of pushback from the right wing in early 2017. Instead, what we got was the Mueller investigation.
My meeting with President Putin was really interesting in so many different ways, because we haven't had relationships with Russia for a long time. And we started. Let me begin by saying that, once again, the full faith and support for America's intelligence agencies. I have a full faith in our intelligence agencies. Whoops, they just turned off the light. That must be the intelligence agencies.
Now, I talked about the Steele dossier, which the right wing for years claimed was the start of the Russian investigation. We actually know that Paul Manafort went and met with some Deripaska people. Remember, Deripaska learned about the Steele dossier from the start. Paul Manafort goes to Europe early 2017, meets with a Deripaska person.
The bombshell burst Tuesday evening when CNN reported the president-elect and President Obama were briefed on the matter last week. The report included unsubstantiated claims that Russian intelligence compiled a dossier on Mr. Trump during visits to Moscow.
Comes back, tells Reince Priebus, this is how you defeat the Russian investigation. And indeed, that is what they did for years, was to say, the Steele dossier is the Russian investigation.
It was supposed to be a routine news conference with the president of Moldova. But President Putin used it to pour scorn on anyone associated with Washington's dirty dossier, those unverified allegations of compromising sexual behavior by Donald Trump. People who cook up hoaxes like that, he said, are worse than prostitutes. But then, in a sarcastic segue, he went on to remind everybody of the details. Trump organized beauty contests, he said, and socialized with the most beautiful women in the world. I find it hard to believe that he rushed to a hotel to meet with Russian girls of loose morals. Although, he added, we do have the best ones in the world.
And Deripaska knew full well that it was full of disinformation, probably because he had a role in filling it with disinformation.
The former CIA station chief here, Steve Hall, who was in Moscow, I think talked about you and Manafort and the connection between you and Manafort, and said, if you want to understand this, this is like the connection between Putin and Trump. Now, why would he say something like that?
It's like, oral kind of story. Very absurd.
What they did is turned the investigation itself into a controversy, turned the investigation into itself into discrediting the FBI.
And again, buckle up. Wow. Huge, massive developments in the biggest scandal in American history.
My God,
This is extraordinary.
Yes, the biggest political scandal of our time.
What did Barack Hussein Obama know, and when did he know it?
So this ties to the attack on the
unelected deep state operatives who defy the voters to push their own secret agendas.
Then, in addition to seeing Kirill Dmitriev come back in this kind of replay of his earlier role in like packaging up deals, including Trump Towers for Donald Trump and his associates,
Cohen said he lied when he told Congress that the dealings with Russia ended in January 2016, before the presidential campaign was heating up. In fact, he admitted they continued for at least another 6 months, and he briefed Trump family members.
In addition to that, the other thing we've learned recently is that in July of 2016, you've got the DNC campaign with the first release of the DNC emails, which leads to
the chair of the DNC, Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, has announced her resignation.
The Democrats are incredibly frustrated because they've already been fighting hacks for months, and they're trying to shame sane people not to use these stolen files, which, by the way, Donald Trump succeeded in doing when he was hacked by Iran in 2024.
This is malinformation. We've been told for over half a decade that hack and leak's not a real thing. Now that, in this case, the shoe's on the other foot, we are finding that, yes, in fact, hack and leak is a real thing.
So they're at this desperate moment. They're like, when is the FBI going to weigh in? On July 25th, the FBI announces an investigation.
This is serious stuff. The DNC was hacked, they believe, by the Russians. Now the DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the arm of House Democrats. And now we're getting word that the FBI and the Justice Department are investigating the possible hacking of the Clinton campaign's computers.
At the time, there are some SVR, so Russian foreign intelligence spies, who are like, let's fuck with things. Let's
pour oil on the fire.
What they do is they say on July 26th, let's frame Hillary Clinton, or let's frame somebody in the deep state. Then what they do is they fabricate some emails involving a real guy, but they fabricate the emails at the Open Society Fund, claiming that Hillary Clinton was going to frame Donald Trump. So this is them framing Hillary Clinton, saying they're going to frame Donald Trump.
Conspiracy theorists have for years alleged Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign launched a plan to falsely accuse Donald Trump of collaborating with Russia. Now, newly declassified information reveals documents that were supposed to confirm those allegations were likely fake and created by Russian spy services.
They knew at that point that the Steele dossier was full of garbage because they put the garbage in the Steele dossier.
Russian disinformation.
What they've done is they've built into any criminal investigation, which again was announced on July 25th, this explosion, this backfire. And boy, did it backfire.
This was a Hillary Clinton plan, but part of it was an FBI plan to be an accelerant to that fake Steele dossier, to those fake Russia collusion claims by pouring oil on the fire.
You've already badly damaged the CIA with the Vault 7 leaks. You've already badly damaged the NSA with the shadow brokers leaks. But starting with the criminal investigation, what you do is you start discrediting everybody at the FBI who has any kind of expertise on Russia. People like Peter Strzok, people like Andrew McCabe. And you do that by saying, how dare you investigate this? How dare you investigate the Steele dossier? When really the Steele dossier was just a fragment of what they were investigating. They were investigating things like Paul Manafort.
Are there any ties between Mr. Trump, you or your campaign, and Putin and his regime?
No, there are not. It's absurd. There's no basis to it.
Why Mike Flynn was so stupid.
That created a compromise situation, a situation where the national security advisor essentially could be blackmailed by the Russians.
That continued to snowball. So as the right wing, as Republicans in Congress continued their jihad against the dossier, they then picked up these documents that were really framing Hillary Clinton, claimed to be stupid. We don't know whether they should have known that they were fabrications or not, but claimed to be stupid, said, oh my God.
Mrs. Clinton was the lie. Mrs. Clinton created the lie. Mrs. Clinton was behind the entire thing.
We found Hillary Clinton was framing Donald Trump, and they set up this entire Durham investigation on it.
That's for Durham to figure out.
That goes on for 4 years. Durham, 2 years in, we now know, should have concluded that these were fabrications, should have dropped the investigation, but he didn't. He continued. And to this day, now Donald Trump is back in office. He is resuscitating the same claims.
They caught President Obama absolutely cold. Tulsi Gabbard.
Tulsi Gabbard is renewing the claims that the deep state was out after Donald Trump because they found Donald Trump doing really stupid things with Russia.
The stunning revelations that we are releasing today should be of concern to every American.
This happens, right, at the moment that Donald Trump is trying to distract from the Epstein files.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
Tulsi Gabbard goes out and basically frames Obama this time.
There is irrefutable evidence that detail how President Obama and his national security team directed the creation of an intelligence community assessment that they knew was false.
Ridiculous conspiracy theory and very easy to unpack. Nevertheless, people aren't saying what they should say, which is that she's ridiculous, she should be fired. And that is the background to the Alaska meeting.
President Putin, will you stop killing civilians?
Remember, Donald Trump is alone in the limousine with Vladimir Putin. Donald Trump has cut off any allies from intelligence sharing about the negotiations with Russia. So for all the UK knows, for all that France knows, Donald Trump may have already put in place a plan to leave NATO, may have already put in a plan to help Russia invade Europe, which is what they're basically trying to do right now. This is all on top of Brexit, of course, and Brexit, we're still seeing the aftermath with Farage marching in the streets.
People clapping and cheering for Charlie Kirk in respect to him.
Russia helped Donald Trump in 2016, and it was quite controversial.
Since Comey confirmed the existence of the FBI's Russia investigation on March 20th, President Trump has sent more than 40 tweets mentioning or alluding to Russia and various Justice Department officials.
Russia helped Trump in 2020. Right?
The National Intelligence Council released an unclassified report earlier this month assessing foreign threats to the 2020 presidential election. The report ultimately found foreign entities like China and Iran did attempt to influence the election, but it was Russian intelligence that most succeeded in spreading disinformation campaigns.
A big part of what Rudy Giuliani was doing was going to known Russian assets.
So a conservative journalist, John Solomon, and two Fox News lawyers, Joe DeGeneva and Victoria Tensing, and Rudy Giuliani and Lev Parnas, are all involved in Mr. Parnas' telling in an effort to enlist the help of a billionaire, Kremlin-connected, allegedly mobbed-up oligarch to help them pressure the Ukrainian government that they must announce investigations of Joe Biden.
They were Ukrainian, but they were known Russian assets.
I had a chance to talk to Victor Shokin, a man who says he was friends of yours, who you asked to come back and help out during the transition after the previous regime. Here's what he said on why he was fired by you. Listen.
Poroshenko fired me at the insistence of the then Vice President Biden because I was investigating Burisma.
Is that why he got fired? Because of the $1 billion and the former Vice President, now President?
First of all, this is the completely crazy person. This is something wrong with him. Second, there is no one single word of truth. And third, I hate the idea to make any comments and to make any intervention in the American election.
And asking for help, and they were giving him help on Hunter Biden.
Russian intelligence is feeding information through Durkheim to Giuliani. It means that Russian intelligence is making its way into the election bloodstream.
Eventually, we come to see Alexander Smirnov frame Joe Biden and his kid, thanks to Bill Barr.
I would have liked to see more coordination and more forceful engagement with the questions involving the Hunter Biden case.
Who, of course, killed the Mueller investigation.
I believe Mueller's stewardship of the investigation was outrageous.
And there's far less outcry, right?
A series of Russians helped Giuliani and others get these stories into the media, and then they simply counted on Americans to promote the stories, to push them and to promote them.
There's almost no outcry about Rudy Giuliani going to these known Russian assets and asking for help. That turns the mob about the Hunter Biden laptop.
So 51 intelligence agents lied. They lied. They knew it was Hunter's.
The quote-unquote Hunter Biden laptop is a hard drive copy of a laptop that the computer repairman claims was Hunter Biden's. Hunter Biden says he doesn't remember it. Even if Hunter Biden dropped it off, there's good reason to believe that it was sort of dealt to Hunter Biden and packed up at a time when he was getting ketamine treatment for
a male, a public person, and a Trump supporter.
If you can believe this, a close friend of Roger Stone's in January of 2019.
Kevin Morris's theory that Keith Abloh is the source of the laptop originally, he's the leak, is absurd.
There are many questions about the Hunter Biden laptop. More recently, Donald Trump has been claiming to know where the Hunter Biden laptop was found.
It was from his bed. It was Hunter's laptop. They said it was created by Russia. Russia. It was the Russia hoax.
Which is very different from the story told by the computer repairman.
I think some people will go, well, hey, wait a second, aren't you just leafing through someone else's private property?
It can be perceived that way, but again, he hired me to do that.
But that Hunter Biden laptop mob is what replaces outrage over Donald Trump getting help from Russia in 2020.
Senator, yes or no? Okay. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election? Let me ask you a question. Is it okay that big technology companies censored the Hunter Biden laptop story, which independent analysis have said it cost Donald Trump millions of votes?
Then in 2024, think about this.
You inherited from the Soviet Union a very strong education system, and average educated people coming from, I would say, the Soviet Union itself, I mean, ex-republics of the Soviet Union, show to be much more competent than average education system in America. That's my opinion. Whose side were you on during the Orange Revolution?
Давайте на русском лучше.
In 2024, you've got, again, some of the same Ukrainian Russian assets who are kind of repackaging the Hunter Biden stuff.
So Hunter Biden role in Burisma, were Ukrainians impressed with his skills?
Я думаю, что роль Хантера Байдена в 30-летии развития Украины не столь велика. И свою историю и отношение к Украине он хорошо описал в своей книжке «Beautiful Things». И есть еще книжка генерального прокурора Шокина на английском языке, которая описывает и эту часть.
I didn't read the Hunter Biden book.
One of the reasons I think Donald Trump was sad he wasn't running against Joe Biden is because they were renewing the same Hunter Biden bullshit from 2020 with the same Ukrainian Russian assets. We know, for example, that some of the bomb threats, both during the Haitian cats and dogs thing and during Election Day, at least came from Russia.
We've heard some threats that were of Russian origin, and so I don't know how to describe if that's viable.
The bomb threats themselves, the IP addresses, were in Russia.
There was a time when Russians were trying to hack into our election equipment, but they've discovered it's far more effective just to hack into our brains with lies that are dressed up to look very real and spread very quickly on social media.
We know there's an American, used to live in West Palm Beach, who was framing Tim Walz during the election.
X took down the fake video, but not until it had been viewed 5 million times and shared across many other platforms. It was clearly meant to damage Walz's legacy as a teacher and coach, which was played up at the DNC with former football players taking the stage on his behalf. And now leading intelligence officials say the hoax has all the earmarks of a Russian disinformation campaign.
There was explicit overt Russian support for Donald Trump in the 2024 election. And one of the things that happens when he comes back in is Pam Bondi shuts down all accountability for such things. Pam Bondi and Kristi Noem, they both shut down. They shut down foreign influence peddling.
When the president held his dinner for 220 individuals who purchased the most of his meme coins, were there foreign interests attending that dinner?
Senator, we're here to talk about the Department of Justice and my budget for the upcoming year.
They shut down the task force that found out that Benny Johnson was on the Russian tape.
U.S. prosecutors allege a media company linked to conservative influencers who regularly reach millions, including Benny Johnson, Tim Pool, and Dave Rubin, was secretly funded by Russian state media employees whose goal was to amplify U.S. domestic division and spread Russian propaganda.
As far as we know, they shut down the investigation into whether Russia was behind those bomb threats.
Don't you think the American people have a right to know? And you said yourself, you're very concerned about foreign influence on our government.
Senator, it is wildly offensive that you would accuse President Trump of not protecting American interest in our country.
They shut down a lot of the rules of CISA into ensuring our election. They shut down now more recently the State Department with a guy who is really close to Russia.
A gentleman by the name of Darren Beattie. He's the new acting undersecretary of state. He was fired from the first Trump administration for his associations with white nationalists.
Who has been made the head of public diplomacy.
Do you think it's necessary for President Trump to essentially clean house in his second term and fire all these officials who are working against his agenda and ultimately the American people?
Absolutely.
They shut down cooperation with the West on foreign influence peddling, on disinformation campaigns.
Global Engagement Center was focused exclusively on what Russia and China did around the world, in Europe, in Latin America, in Africa, in Asia, obviously in Ukraine.
They shut down all of the tools that the United States has used to protect against Russian and Chinese and Iranian influence operations. So right now, the U.S. is basically defenseless against that stuff.
These people take information warfare very, very seriously. They wake up in the morning and they say, okay, what can we do today, somewhere in the world, to undermine the United States, undermine the West, undermine democratic institutions?
One of the things that Spencer Cox said in the wake of the Charlie Kirk murder is that both Chinese and Russian bots are, again, trying to sow polarization in the wake of this.
What we're seeing is our adversaries want violence. China, we have bots from Russia, China, all over the world that are trying to instill disinformation and encourage violence.
There was this moment during the election where Donald Trump sort of committed to installing Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, who did not get installed, J.D. Vance, who is Peter Thiel's man, dupe, whatever, J.D. Vance, who is very pro-Russian.
Well, first, Jake, the idea that Putin loves Donald Trump or Donald Trump loves Putin is absolutely absurd.
Tulsi Gabbard, who has been very pro-Russian, and RFK Jr., who had been pro-Russian. So he sets up this meme on September 29th of last year with all of these kind of Russian useful idiots at best.
So what we should be doing is with Ukraine, encouraging them to take a defensive posture, not these disastrous counteroffensive the Biden administration has been promoting.
The counteroffensive is within Ukraine. They're not seeking land from Russia. And in fact, just today...
I'm not passing judgment on the morality of what they're doing.
From that moment, he is sort of locked into giving them cabinet posts. And with the exception of Vivek Ramaswamy, he did.
Reports say the main reason behind Ramaswamy's exit from Doge is a brief falling out with Elon Musk.
Early after the election, Nikolai Patrushev, who is one of Vladimir Putin's top advisors, basically put out a message saying, this time you're going to pay your debts.
Well, Cold War warrior Nikolai Patrushev, part of the Russian president's inner circle and former secretary of the Security Council, said to a Russian newspaper that Trump was duty-bound to act on his words.
You made certain commitments to get elected, and we're going to come collect on them this time.
Patrushev said to achieve success in the elections, Donald Trump relied on certain forces to which he has corresponding obligations, and as a responsible person, he will be obliged to fulfill them.
We are going to collect this time.
And in January, it will be time for the specific actions of the elected president.
As if to say, in 2016, we got you elected, and you didn't pay off the bills. This time, we're going to collect.
What are the prospects for Russia-US economic cooperation in the Arctic? What have you proposed to the Americans?
We are open to consider different investment opportunities that we can do jointly with the U.S., again, in certain sectors approved by the Russian government, approved by our leadership.
You have to wonder about the Alaska thing, about Trump's refusal to impose sanctions on Russia, about Trump's refusal to do anything about Russia, is what kind of leverage Russia has over him.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. That was very profound. And I will say that I believe we had a very productive meeting.
Donald Trump continues to use the same grievance, the same, effectively, chant to signify the grievance that goes back to the dossier, which was
Russia, Russia, Russia.
Donald Trump made it a backbone of a grievance that always polarized the country.
We first went through Russia, Russia, Russia. It was all bullshit. We then went through the Muller report.
The way in which Donald Trump got out of his Russian problem, the way in which he got out of his impeachment problem after having asked for help to basically frame Hunter Biden, the way he got out of his 2021 problem was
Russia, 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 Russia.
Was to polarize the country. And each time he did that, he made false claims about his opponent, starting with the Steele dossier.
It was the dossier. Remember the famous dossier? I called it the fake news dossier.
One of the things that happened in the advance of Alaska is the way in which Tulsi Gabbard...
Congressional aides of both parties on the House Foreign Affairs Committee
didn't trust then Congresswoman Gabbard with sensitive information.
The way in which Tulsi Gabbard declassified the Durham appendix, which is how I figured this out and Charlie Savage figured this out, she effectively made it public and clear that Donald Trump's entire route of polarization, his entire tool to polarize the country, is a gift from
Russia. It was the Russia hoax.
Tulsi made that clearer, but she also, the way in which she redacted it, she protected parts of that. So once again, in the same way that Michael Cohen and Donald Trump had a secret from July 27th, 2016, which is that Cohen actually had called the Kremlin, that Cohen actually was chasing this impossibly lucrative Trump Tower deal that would involve the GRU and sanctioned banks.
But we had the Russia hoax.
Donald Trump has these other secrets with Russia.
I've always had a fantastic relationship with President Putin, with Vladimir.
One of those secrets is that the entire story he has used to polarize the country, to drive the country into pieces, into the kind of animosity that leads into the Charlie Kirk shooting. All of that derived from
Russia.
His survival from the start, his tools to survive from the start have derived
from Russia. And I said it wasn't from Russia, it was from Hunter.
So where are we? We are incredibly polarized. We are facing down civil war.
I'll tell you what doesn't make people feel safe. A tank next to Chipotle. It's stupid, and it's for the cameras, and you can get into the legal aspect of posse comitatus, but it's foundational. So I keep saying, where are the don't tread on me people?
People like Elon Musk came in, destroyed U.S. ID, destroyed U.S. soft power. Trump is now destroying the economy with his tariffs.
We're going to lose 25 or 30% of the farmers in this country.
Trump is basically destroying the Western alliance.
Manufacturing jobs are leaving for China. Our best researchers are fleeing to Europe.
Destroying NATO.
Well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want.
With RFK Jr. destroying American defenses against epidemics.
It's not your standard talk, I would say, and that has to do with medical and vaccines, but I like the fact that he's different.
He has basically committed hegemonic suicide. So you can take events from 2016 and draw those events, the polarization, the reliance on Russian disinformation, the magnification of people like Tulsi Gabbard, who are Russian useful idiots at best.
My worry was someone like Tulsi would do everything they can to try to keep Assad in power. She was a big fan. Now Assad's gone, but my worry is now for my country, the United States. Tulsi Gabbard is almost a perfect product of Russian information operations.
The efforts to polarize, the efforts to replace rational thought with this kind of mob-driven controversy.
Pam Bondi's saying she's going to go after hate speech. Is that, I mean, a lot of your allies say hate speech is free speech.
You probably go after people like you because you treat me so unfairly.
The efforts to drive grievance out of legal investigations.
President Trump says he is suing the New York Times for $15 billion over claims of defamation and libel. He announced the move on social media.
There's a straight through line from those aspects of the 2016 election interference to today.
I think you will probably be rewarded mightily by our press.
There's the polarization.
Let's see if that happens.
There's the replacement of rational thinking with this kind of mob distraction controversy.
That'll be next.
There's this grievance about election interference. There's this reliance on Russian disinformation to build that grievance.
Oh, Vladimir Putin said something, one of the most interesting things. He said your election was rigged because you have mail-in voting.
There's this attack on the deep state. All of those have their roots, have a direct through line to the 2016 election interference.
Next time in Moscow.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I don't know. I'll get a little heat on that one.
Donald Trump has used those strands effectively to commit hegemonic suicide.
I asked you to come together so that I could inform you about the results of our visit. Our delegation's visit to the United States, to Alaska. I want to note right away that the visit was timely and very beneficial.
To give away all of America's hegemonic tools.
First and foremost, of course, we talked about the possible resolution of the Ukrainian crisis on a just basis.
Just committed suicide.
Donald Trump, if he were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
It's astonishing.
He talks about, he can end it on day one. You know what that is? It's about surrender.